how I personally practice Sabbath is during the week. I try to take a lot of quiet time with the Lord throughout the week. So I'm constantly resting on the Lord, taking once again from that manna kind of perspective of like, I'm not relying on my Sunday service to fuel me up for the rest of the week so that I'm good to go. My reality is that I'm an associate pastor at my church, at my congregation, and it's a lot. I put in a lot of work on Sundays, and a lot of people may like cringe at that and be like, well, like, you're doing it under the Lord. It's like, yeah, but the rest of the week I'm doing things under the Lord as well. So, but I have to make sure that I get my time with my family, with my God, at separate occasions that are not whenever I'm serving in service. And I do sometimes get some rest and fulfillment from Sunday services, but whenever I don't, then I focus my attention onto my personal time with the Lord and my time with my family. I know Katie's, my wife's family is very good about bringing scripture to the table. So we talk about the things of the Lord all of the time and not in an argumentative way, but like a genuine, like encouraging, building up way. And that feels like rest to me. A lot of the times it rests my soul.
Yeah. I know the feeling.
Yeah. I think that's one of the hard parts that like, I praise God that you and I both have like we come from really good Christian homes, and we have good solid families, but not all of us have that reality either.
Yeah.
And which makes this practice all the more difficult sometimes because you're living in an environment where that's not promoted and you're like a good biblical rest is not, practiced all the time in your household.
Yeah.
So my heart goes out to those people.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about practical advice, like for people who have that situation where they just can't find the people to talk to. Maybe there's not even like a localist gathering near them that they know of, and they can't, be with other Christians. I mean, that's a really hard. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to not have that around me, because I've had that around me my whole life. And I was dumb enough to leave that, right? Like I was so, what's the word? Privileged. I was so privileged in that I had like this amazing support from my family. Like I had my parents teaching me since I was born, and I had a church and a community, and I was like, well, I don't need all that. And there's people who don't get that. And they're yearning for it. But at the end of the day, those people are awesome and they supplant us and they help us.
Yeah.
But they're not where the rest is.
Right.
The rest was Jesus Christ, right? And so at the end of the day, if you want to rest, if you need rest, even if you can't get a day off, even if the only way you can survive, and the only way your family can survive is if you work 70 hours a week and you don't have a day off, you work every single day, and there's like 3 jobs you're pulling. I don't know, something ridiculous. Just imagine like a ridiculous overworking situation. Obviously, please try and find like a better solution. But if you can't, if you're still stuck in it right now and you need something now, I would say prioritize Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Every day. And honestly, this doesn't just go for people who have crazy lives. That goes for if you have the most privileged, laid back life, prioritize Jesus Christ every day. I was telling a brother yesterday who's having some trouble with scheduling for school because it's hard to focus on school, and he also has other passions that he wants to focus on that he feels the Lord wants him to do. But all of it is kind of like distracting him because he just gets so overwhelmed with it all that he can't focus on any of it, which I relate to. And the thing that we came to, the conclusion we came to is you don't touch anything until you speak to the Lord.
That's good.
You don't go to work. You don't go to school. You don't, work on whatever awesome project you want to work on. You don't spend time with your family until you spend time with the Lord. And so the answer isn't not to spend time on all those things. You have to do those things. That's how you survive as a human. You have to go to work. You have to go to school. You have to spend time with your family. That means that you have to wake up earlier, if that's the problem, and spend time with the Lord.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be long, right? Like,
No, some of it comes down to discipline. One of the reasons why it's a practice, why Sabbath for them and the Lord's Day for us is a practice, is because a lot of the times, if we didn't have that disciplined part of our life to do it, I don't think any of us would rest.
Yeah.
The flesh doesn't want to rest most of the time. It just wants to keep going and doing as much as you can. And it also wants to try to make provisions. Like, one of the things I've had to repeat to myself a lot of the times is I'm not a better provider than God is. So like whenever you're talking about that, like if you're working 70 hours a week, like, so have a conversation with the Lord. Like if you're like, God, I need all 7 days in order to be able to like make ends meet. I think one of the things that Christ is calling us to is to trust him for that day. Like I know things may be tight, but God makes a way when there doesn't seem to be a way.
Yeah.
And if you're like, I just don't see how this
which
makes
goes
sense
back to like the whole manna idea.
Yes. Yeah. That he will provide for you. And I'm not telling you to quit your job right now and become a monk and spend every single day with the Lord. That's not what I'm saying. But like,
I mean, do spend every day with the Lord, just not every waking second.
Yes.
Specifically reading and meditating.
yes. Yeah. But I think we just need more of that discipline. Yeah. I need more of that discipline. Whenever I told you about the way that I practice Sabbath, like, and I try to squeeze it, I try to spend time with the Lord every day of the week, at least a little bit. I'm not consistent with that all the time, you know? And I feel it whenever I'm not, whenever I haven't had my time with the Lord, my wife experience, like she can tell the difference. My relationship with like at work, like I'm unfocused. I don't have the energy. Like if Christ is in us and we are not giving and we are trusting, if we told him at the beginning that we trust him for all of our needs and we're making him the Lord of our life, but then we're not actually doing that, we're missing a giant piece of our whole life.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like, it can be daunting to be like, oh, I have to spend how long with God now? Which understandably, it's like, okay, so you're telling me I have to close my eyes and pray to someone who doesn't always speak back the way I want him to. And I have to read this, 66 books. I have to get through all this and I have to understand it. And I have to, it seems like a lot. But, if you want like even more practical, like when you wake up, pray. Doesn't have to be a long prayer. Just pray. Because the first thing you should be doing is thinking of the Lord. Because if you're starting the day with just praying, I mean, I've found so many times that has helped me go throughout the day. Because when I wake up, there's all these things I want to do. Like this morning, I woke up and the first thing I did, this is hypocritical of me, I know, but the first thing I did was I opened up my iPad and I started watching a TV show. And then an hour later, when that show was over, I was like, oh, it's early. I'll just watch another episode because I was off today. It took me until like 11 to actually sit down and spend time with the Lord. And it took me until I stood up from bed 2 hours after I woke up to actually pray for the first time. And all that prayer was, oh, right. Good morning, Lord. That was pretty much it. And then I went downstairs. And that was like, man, just talking about it, it's not that I feel guilty, but I feel like there's so much more that I could be getting out of speaking to the Lord because he's offering so much. So I really think that like speaking to the Lord first thing should be a non-negotiable. Like you can't miss this. You have to do it. And if you're worried because there's people around you that are going to yell at you for speaking to the Lord, do it in your head. He can hear you. You don't have to say anything out loud. You don't have to spend an hour. You can if you want to. It's great if you do. But if all you have is a couple minutes and you don't even have access to a Bible, I'm going to extremes here. The fact that you're listening to this podcast suggests that you probably have access to a Bible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in case you don't, so that means anyone who does, all right, you already have a leg up. If you don't, and you need one verse that you have in your head, just repeat that verse. Think about that verse, meditate on the verse, and ask the Lord to give you more, and he will.
Absolutely.